Creative people are the trusted communicators of our society, a society that is ridden with more fear, loneliness, and anxiety than ever.
We recognize that creative people and those championing their work should be honored for who they are and treated with care as they devote their lives to articulating the human experience.
My name is Samantha Jervey.
My name is Emily Falvey.
Together, we're the co-founders and co-host of Mind Over Melody, a podcast focused on wellness for artists, songwriters, and music industry professionals.
We pray our conversations can be a safe place for you to rest, grow, contemplate, and be reminded that your wellness matters first and foremost, and ultimately leads to the kind of creativity that sustains and abounds.
Thank you for listening to Season 1 of Mind Over Melody. We'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for this season, Truist and Porter's Call, and to our editor, Cooper Carr. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or a qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health issue. If you are experiencing a crisis or need immediate help, please contact a local mental health service or emergency services. Other resources are available on our website at mindovermelody.com. Hey guys, welcome to Mind Over Melody. My name is Emily Falvey, and I have my co-host Samantha Jervey here with us. Today we're going to be talking about the legal protection of creatives, and we have a really esteemed guest with us here. His name is Christian Barker. I'm very fortunate. He's my own personal attorney and has represented me through my last publishing deal negotiation, and he's just a baller. And so Sam will have the honor of getting to read his bio, but we're just so excited for today's episode and hope that it's beneficial for you as you're navigating your own creative journey. So let's get rolling.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Em. Christian, I have to say, as I was reading over your bio before we kicked off, I was like, this is one heck of an impressive man. So I'm excited to have the honor to share the bio.
Oh, wow. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. So, okay, buckle up, everybody, because I'm so excited. Named two-time as one of Billboard's top music attorneys, Christian Barker is a music industry-focused, transactional entertainment attorney with a diverse roster of artists, songwriters, producers, independent record labels, independent music publishing companies, and artist management companies nationwide. A former artist manager, Christian is noteworthy for the creative value he designs for clients, such as pitching songs and authoring confidentially tailored white papers on TikTok best strategy. His industry expertise has allowed him to orchestrate the signings of several rising TikTok artists to some of the largest record deals for new artists in history. Because of his continued success, some of the industry's longtime iconic, award-winning producers and songwriters have gravitated into his orbit, requesting his procurement skills in shopping their catalogs, both songs and master royalties, to buyers internationally. Conversely, major buyers frequently use Christian to assist in the location and acquisition of noteworthy music IP rights as they grow their portfolios. In addition to music-related clients, Christian represents clients in the influencer, TV and film, podcasting, fine arts, and PR digital media realms. He also advises on Web3, blockchain, and NFT strategy, and manages intellectual property portfolios for numerous businesses, both inside and outside of the entertainment space. Aside from his legal practice, Christian is a sought-after creative consultant, providing talent scouting, song plugging, and career advising services to numerous songwriters, artists, labels, and publishers, along with influencer, brand partnership, and investment, plus business development activities. And he's a family man, so we're just going to, on top of all of that. So as Emily said, I'm so appreciative of you jumping in today. When it comes to legal protection, it's a topic that brings up a lot for a lot of people, and especially as from a psychological perspective, it's a very vulnerable place.
Right.
A lot of trust placed in your hands in choosing the right attorney, even getting the courage to engage an attorney. So not to jump ahead, but, building off of your bio and what you shared, we just love to hear in your words a bit more about where you're from, what your story is, and how did you become an entertainment attorney in the first place?
Yeah, so my journey is, I would consider it more unique. I think everybody's journey is their own, but I'm from East Tennessee originally, from very rural area, Monroe County, Tennessee, about halfway in between Knoxville and Chattanooga, and really just as a kid grew up simultaneously loving country music, but also hip hop music. I was an old '90s. '90s was kind of a very classic era for both hip hop and country. So I was very fortunate. I kind of always have in the back of my mind that most people, and you guys can tell me if you think this is true, most people's favorite music is the music they fall in love with, usually around 7th, 8th grade and 9th grade.
100%.
And that has like a huge impact on really your musical taste, but also, that's a very formative age. And so for me, being exposed, back whenever I was that age, we had the Columbia House mail order CD business was big, where you would get these mail outs and you would take stickers and order like 10 CDs for free. And then I'm sure they were going to charge my family on the back end, but I was just putting the stickers and, everything from Brooks and Dunn to Dr. Dre and mailing those things back in. And, we had, my father was, before I was born, was like a manager of Radio Shack. And so he had all these massive speakers that he had acquired while he was like home audio speakers back old school days, whenever
Excellent.
you had these massive home audio speakers. And so I had a huge kind of stereo in my bedroom, and I would play record after record, and fell in love with music that way. And music was always a part of my life, but I don't recall this, but my wife says when we first met, when we were 17, 18 years old, that I always was talking to her and saying, I can't decide if I want to be an attorney or I want to work in the music business. Mm-hmm. It's either one of the two. So after the long winding journey, I kind of found a way to do both. So, but it's not always been, I didn't go to undergrad wanting, thinking in my head, hey, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. You just explore a bunch of different areas. And for me, my practice now is really about working with good people on good projects. And I think even from an early age, I kind of really just took an initiative to follow people and ideas instead of following like a specific goal, because I just really feel the organic evolution of career paths and careers and jobs and things like that happen best when you're just continually curious and following things that you love and just being open to where that path takes you. I have a master's in environmental policy from Vermont Law School. Obviously, I'm not using that currently, but at the time, I just felt led to do that, and it was a wonderful experience. And part of that program, there was a large curriculum about nonprofit management. Although it was in the context of the environmental space at the time, now I use that with the nonprofits that I'm with, and that was a premier education that kind of dovetails into a lot of stuff I'm doing now. So you never know. My point is, you never know where your path's going to take you, but you can find value from a lot of different things, even outside of where your current, dreams are.
Yeah.
So good.
That's a perfect segue, Christian, into our next question. You and I both sit on a board for an organization called Mental Health Initiative, which is doing really honorable work in the nonprofit space for people who need long-term mental health care. So we're so grateful for your championing of creatives through your profession, but also in that nonprofit space. So I love how everything kind of has all crossed over and come together to this beautiful career that you're creating. What do you think is the greatest need from your experience in the creative community currently? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
From like a wellness perspective, I think that, like I said a little bit before, making sure you have a full your plate is not just filled with ambition and the singular focus of becoming a music industry professional. I think that those that have the most healthy relationship with their career or potential career are the ones that have the best balance. And that is several things, taking care of yourself, but also surrounding yourself with good people. Nashville specifically, and really the music industry in general, is a relationship business. And, you're not going to have thousands of people that you share a close connection with, but you might have 8 to 10 that get you and that are close friends. And, that's a huge part of being fulfilled and feeling safe and healthy in the expression of your art, which is a brave thing. You're putting yourself out there as an artist, whether you're a songwriter, producer, actual artist, and that you're sharing your art, and that's something that's coming from you, and it's very personal. And so I think that having a community that you build that supports that can help you navigate the challenges. That's really, I think, more on the relational side. I mean, from nuts and bolts industry, practical business, you also want to assemble a good team. I like to encourage my clients to think of their business, or think of their career as a business, and take themselves outside of it and imagine that they're the CEO of their business. And if you're a CEO, then you want to fill your table with the best board of directors that you can. And your board of directors as a music industry professional are going to be your attorney, potentially your manager, business manager, and or accountant. If you're an artist, that's going to be an agent. If you're a songwriter, it's going to be a publisher. If you're a producer, part of that team is going to be potentially a producer manager or a label that you partner with. And so every business meaning a person in the music industry, their career is different. And the team building component of that is crucial. And it's not necessarily just for the success, but also to tie it back into your well-being. You want trusted partners, trusted advisors on your team.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's so great. When you said that, Christian, about you are the CEO of your own business, I was like, yes, because I cannot tell you how many times, both when I worked in country music and then also in Christian music, most recently at a label, as an A&R and a publisher, it's like that was a constant conversation. And I think the underlying thing is also discernment, like how do you
Right.
discern who are good people, who are good partners that you bring in. And I think that's a really natural segue into this next question. And you touched on this a bit, but I'm sure Emily and I, both in our various capacities, we've encountered, or maybe ourselves stumbled into kind of legal adjacent situations, or situations that had legal implications that, I've met with artists who were on the brink of signing a management deal right out of, maybe they didn't go to college and this was the first manager that took an interest in them and was promising, this and that and then some, but there was something that was a bit off, and then we hear those horror stories
Right.
about people getting roped into these really tough deals to navigate out of that have implications for
Sure.
career longevity. And so I'm curious, what are some of the things that creatives can be doing today to protect themselves legally, regardless of where they're at in their career?
Yeah, so I think that when you do take yourself outside of yourself, so to speak, and realize that you're the CEO of your music industry business or music industry career, there's a few things to keep in mind. Number one, I think specifically with management, the word manager is very misleading, in that the connotation in most people's minds think that a manager is your manager, as in your boss. But that is not the case legally, nor is that the context of the role. A manager in the music context is really very akin to like a politician's chief of staff. A politician's chief of staff is not the boss.
Right.
And so their job and role is to carry out the mission and vision and ideas and goals of the politician who they work for. And so when I encourage my clients to think of your manager as, a manager, the manager of your business, you're the CEO, that's like, they're the COO. They report to you. You know what I mean? And so when you have that mentality, then you also have a responsibility to make sure you're leading your manager to the places that you want to go and not the other way around.
Yeah.
And that, usually an attorney or manager are some of the first folks at the table for a music industry professional. And it's important to remember just from the beginning that it's your mission, vision, values that you are putting out to the world. So again, assembling those relationships with people that are aligned with your vision and goals are important. That's not to say that managers who are experienced don't have great ideas that you might not have thought of, or connections that you didn't have. And I don't, there are some brilliant managers that have single-handedly launched artists or songwriters or producers from obscurity to fame. But they do that within the context of operating in more of that chief of staff role. And so that's something that's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I experienced that power dynamic myself, signing my first publishing deal at 21. It's easy. I remember I was referring to my publishers as my boss, and I had a friend and a collaborator of mine who kept saying, Emily, they're not your boss. You're their boss.
Yeah.
And as a 21-year-old woman, that was such a weird paradigm to be in, and I think I still struggle with that. I also came at it from, I was the intern, so I went very quickly from being the intern at the company I was at to being employed and being somebody providing intellectual property. So I think being able to step into that, and it's not in an egotistical, like, you work for me. I think the best creative relationships are partnerships where a publisher or a manager or whoever is somebody that comes alongside and adds equal value. But I do think to feel like you have that agency over your career is so crucial to a beneficial relationship. So I appreciate that insight, Christian.
Yeah,
for sure.
I will piggyback on that, Emily. Like, I think I saw that within the label system too, is like in that A&R position, it's not always the immediate place artists go. Like I saw so many artists mentally approaching their management partnership as like, I'm deferring to them. And coming at it also as like practicing, as a therapist, moonlighting as a therapist on the side. Along that, it was like, hey, I just want to challenge you to like pause and consider if you're yielding to what they deem is the best thing for your career, that is a pathway to resentment. Like it can be, not always, but are you making choices that are self-honoring right now? And I saw this like power differential where it's like, oh, but this person has been in the industry for 20 plus years. They have all of these accolades. And I'm like, yes, and which is what I appreciate about what you were saying, Christian. It's like both and. Like, I'm so grateful they're on my team because they bring such experience and knowledge and relationships and opportunity as a result. And I still have agency over what choices I make that honor my career. I can still say no to them, which can be really scary, especially I think for younger artists, but even older artists too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why I'm so hooked on the CEO kind of analogy, because as a CEO, let's say you're a CEO of a tech company. Well, you want to hire the best person that knows about quantum computing technology,
Right.
and they know exponentially more about that than you. But that doesn't mean you're still not the CEO just because they have exponentially more knowledge,
Yeah, that's good. I think about even the most proven, successful record labels or managers or whoever. I look at this, even songwriters. I look at the batting average of those professionals, and they haven't gotten everything right over the course of their career. You look at even the most successful labels who have artists dominating market share, but at the same time, they've probably dropped 10, 20 artists over the course of that year. It's so interesting to think our industry failure is so baked in to it. And that's not in a bad way. I think we learn from that. But I think I value that freshness and that insight, and that when you're not jaded and you have naivete, I think that there's some bold, creative decisions that can be made in that time that maybe the 20-year veteran wouldn't think of, but are just as valuable and may disrupt the whole system. So there's value. As Sam Jervey always says, it's a both and. And I think that, we need all kinds of kinds.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads me into, what are creatives' biggest stressors from your vantage point, Christian? I know there's some obvious ones, but I'd love to hear from your perspective what you encounter.
I think financial stressors are the biggest. And this is both, it's a comment on just creators, artists, songwriters, producers in the music industry on their end. But we'll have some advice for aspiring music industry professionals on the back end of this. But the number one goal for artist, songwriter, producer is to be able to work in the music business as your sole source of income and sustaining your living expenses. And so that is a huge, once you do that, then you can, not that you couldn't before, but it's very empowering to know that your art is able to sustain you as a person professionally. And so that should always be the first goal for an aspiring industry professional is don't overwhelm yourself with thinking about number ones or, massive arena shows or anything like that. Your goal number one should be creating a career where your sole job is working in the industry, whatever that profession that you aspire to be is. And so that, I don't think that you can understate the mental importance of being able to do that, because like we discussed before, art is very personal. And so it's very empowering and inspiring to know that your personal art and your ideas that you're putting out into the world are good enough to sustain you professionally.
Yeah.
And so once you have that, then that also becomes a stressor in of itself, because you have you have to maintain it. There is a time period where once you attain that level, then you have to continue doing progressing in your career in order to continue that. And that, I feel like from a mental health perspective, is the most crucial time period in the music industry. It's not getting the deal, because mentally, if you're working at a coffee shop on the side, you're going to have the coffee shop money, or you have some security there. When you get your first deal and shift into doing it full time and you have no safety net, then that to me is the time period where you need the biggest support group. You need to be open and honest with your friends and peers about how stressful it is. And I think that just doing all of the right things during that time period, and really, I would say secondarily, making sure that you're putting your best foot forward, showing up on time, being structured with your time, remembering now that this is your job, while simultaneously not losing the love and dream and the actual personal nature of the art. It's really, really challenging.
Yeah, I think I'd love to add, just from my own personal experience, I think there can be a little bit of a damaging point where somebody signs their first deal and they think that their deal is going to finance their life and they're going to write themselves into a hit really quickly. And I think that can almost create stress. There's this book by Elizabeth Gilbert that I always reference. It's called Big Magic. And Liz Gilbert in the book talks about how creativity, kind of dies under the pressure of needing to be your sole financial support. And so when you're making 20 or 30 grand in your starting publishing deal, trying to live in Nashville and the state of the economy that we're in, I think that can become a point of okay, I'm doing this. I have a publishing deal. This is my full-time job. To me, it's and this is maybe not the most mentally healthy way to approach it, but I've kind of had to make a commitment to the grind for myself of, okay, I'm going to sing some EDM vocals and create a musical side hustle to help myself and not be above if somebody calls me to do a dog sitting gig or a house sitting gig or whatever. I think having the commitment to covering your financial bases. I mean, everybody has a different perspective. I also know people who have put their lives on credit cards and bet on themselves in such a way that when they have a hit, they're able to, they've said that they've done it. I just, for myself, I'm trying to figure out how to be financially secure, even in a time when you're a broke 21-year-old person. How do you do that well? And so I don't know what that even looks like. But
I think that for me, and what I encourage clients and peers is it's really hard to not focus on money itself.
Yep.
And focus on the process. But I've found that if you have the ability to self-regulate and create discipline and structure around your job, that eventually the financial part will take care of itself. And I think it's, transitioning into the music industry as a profession, sometimes it happens later in life. And I think that you can draw on experiences in your life. If you think about what are the times that I was performing my best just generally in life, where I felt like I was just crushing it. 9 times out of 10, it's the time periods that you were being very disciplined, whether it's with sports or just taking care of yourself and things like that. And so there's a lot of analogies you can bring into that. One of my clients that has seen a huge rise to fame very quickly is an artist named Warren Ziders. And I think a lot of his success, and he started in the music space fairly later in his life because he was a college athlete playing lacrosse, and he exited college and started dabbling in music. But I think the thing that has made his trajectory so strong and fast is that he never stopped training like he did in lacrosse.
He took that mental conditioning mindset.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he still wakes up early, drinks a gallon of water a day, trains, and treats his performances like a game. He's getting in the mindset, I want to deliver the best show for the crowd. He's taking care of his body. He's, that very strategic about the discipline part.
Yeah.
And I think that that not everyone obviously had the opportunity to be a college athlete, but I think everyone can think about what time period in your life outside of the music space, or maybe even in it, that you felt the most fulfilled and you felt like the best version of yourself, and take your actions from that time period and translate them to the music space now. And then if you do that, I'm a firm believer that the money, financial part of it will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
Abundance mindset. I love that.
yeah, routines I hear is kind of this protective barrier, because it is hard. I've both sitting in the counseling space with creatives who I've watched really wrestle with the hustle culture, grind culture, right? It's like, at what
Sure.
cost? I think it's that moment, and I've seen this on the industry side too, and talked to many peers, experienced it myself, where there's, the first job I started out at, my salary was $27,500 in Nashville, Tennessee. That is below the poverty line, and quite frankly, in today's economy, that's still like a starting salary for many of these entry level positions, which is insane,
Right.
because that was 2016 when I started. But there's this grieving, almost the disillusionment, right? And so there's that component, but also everything you do in the industry is very entrepreneurial. I deeply believe, whether you are
Very much
an
so.
aspiring executive or a creative in the sense of a songwriter, producer, or artist. And yeah, you have to have these rhythms. You have to have these protective barriers, whether that's your community, as you talked about earlier, or just rhythms to help keep you in some semblance of like control, not the like anxiety gripping control, but also like, this is helping me remember that I'm doing this for a purpose. And because otherwise I think it can get really chaotic if you just wake up at different intervals, you're staying up late, you throw in alcohol with it. And we've all faced this in the industry. It's so dysregulating. So that kind of leads.
Yeah, I think that recipe that you find is going to be different for every person.
For sure.
I think that some people rely on certain relationships, some people rely on certain life structure, but that's why I just try to ask people to think about when they felt most successful, most on top of their game, because everybody's kind of mix there is going to be different.
Totally.
I love it.
That's great. Strengths-based approach. I like it. We're talking a lot about choices, that we make, and kind of on the opposite side of that, right? Like we've emphasized choices that can help us and help propel us forward in our careers and support our goals financially, emotionally. But are there certain choices you see creatives frequently make in your, from your position, that have a negative impact on their mental health and thus their career?
I think that personally internalizing the results of interactions is something that can be very challenging. And when you are an aspiring songwriter, artist, producer, and like we discussed before, you're putting your ideas out there. It is stressful, but a lot of times, and even as an industry professional, and for industry professionals listening to this as well, and that aren't the creators but are in the space, I struggled a lot with outreach early on in my career, because I just, you move here and you're so excited and you send emails to people, and unfortunately a lot of times you get responses or you don't get responses, or you get a response like, sorry, I'm busy, good luck, or it's a competitive space, and whenever you're artist, songwriter, producer, and you're sharing your work, same thing. You might get no response, you might have a tracked link you send and realize that no one never clicked it. And to me, I think the solution to that is just to try to, I know it sounds counterintuitive, try to impersonalize your outreach internally and treat it more of a numbers game. Because the reality is, if you start thinking of it in a numbers game, then you're less attached personally to it. And I used to do a seminar for high school and college students about networking, and I created this kind of concept called the rule of halves. And the rule of halves is this: so if you reach out to 50 people, probably only 25 people are going to even respond. Out of those 25 people, you're going to have half that actually take a meeting with you, 12. So you're down to 12. And out of those 12, you're probably only going to have like a genuine connection. Like, when you meet somebody and you're like, oh, that was a good meeting. You're probably only going to have a connection with about half of those. And even the people that you have the best meeting, the best connection with, they still have life. They have sicknesses, kids, things like that. And so only about half of those you're going to stay in touch with. So you're going to have 3 people that you have a genuine connection with, that you maintain a long-term relationship in the industry with. And so you went from 50 emails to 3 genuine relationships. But if you send 250 emails, then you have 12 relationships.
The statistics.
And so it's just a numbers game. And when you think of it like that, then there's no shame in sending emails and engaging with people and things like that, because you will find, I think, if you send 50 emails, you will get 3 really good long-term relationships out of it. That's
true. So true.
So that's kind of my rule of halves as far as being a numbers game, and not getting caught up in whether people like or don't like you or are not responsive to you.
And that, I think, your mindset, creatives a lot, they are already in that space of like, I'm putting myself out there, are people going to like me? So it can feel very personal. But to your point, there's a book I love called The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. And I often refer this to like 20-something-year-old clients. I read it in my 20s. It was really, I think, essential in my career in the music business, was remembering the power of loose connections, right? And not to quote Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I would always tell that.
That's right.
That was kind of my motto of like, yeah, I could email this person and they might not ever respond. However, if they do respond, it could be life-changing. Even if
for sure
they are the person who just introduces you to the person who maybe that's the person you do a publishing deal with, or who offers you your next job in 5 years. You just never know. So I think that I love your rule of halves, and also just planting seeds, putting yourself out there. But it does take a lot of just okay, this isn't personal to who I am. Even though I will think it is.
Well, and if you're a creative, you have a really unique gift in that, unlike a traditional profession or even sports or in the TV film, in part of the entertainment space. And my daughter actually is the one that told me this last week, and this concept, and it kind of shook me, because I'm literally employed in the entertainment space, and she's a junior in high school thinking about college prep, and she told me this, and I can't stop thinking about it. But she said the thing about doing art is that you don't have to have someone else's permission to express yourself.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a traditional job, you have to get hired in order to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in acting, you have to get the part before you can do your art. If you're in sports, you have to make the team before you can show your skills.
Yeah.
But in the music space or even the fine arts space, you get to show your skills. You don't need permission to show your skills. You know what I mean? And to do your authentic art. And I was just mind blown, and it's stuck with me ever since because, you don't need permission in the fine arts space to do your art, and that's really, really special. I think
Your daughter sounds wise beyond her years, which is a testament to you as her father as well. But that's incredible. My mind was blown.
Thank you.
Like when you said that too. It's so true. And it points back to what Emily was talking about. Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic, I think, talks a lot about that. And in fact, if you are looking for permission, that will be felt in your art, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think if you're not operating from that place, it can be less fulfilling, which kind of leads into this question of, I'm just curious, what do you consider emotional fulfillment to look like in a career such as music?
I think that emotional fulfillment in your career in music goes back to surrounding yourself with good people and working on good projects, because you can be making money and still not happy, and you can be making money and good art but not feel good about your company. You know? And so I think finding fulfillment definitely involves the dueling component of the company that you keep and the projects that you're working on. And that's going to change over time. But, you know, you want to be fulfilled in what you're doing. And that really just means continuing to love what you're doing. And the only way you're going to love it is if you're doing it with good people and you're working on good projects. Oftentimes, and I face this, and this happens with industry professionals, I'm sure just as often as creatives early on, like we talk about the stressors of relying solely on your art to take care of your living expenses. And early on, entertainment professionals will take on projects that will pay them money that aren't necessarily the best options for them, like long-term for their fulfillment. And I'm very guilty of this myself, you know, because having, you know, layer on the stress of having a family to take care of and things like that. You know, you have to make money to provide. And so, you know, getting to the point in your career where you don't have to take the clients on or the projects on that you don't want to, that aren't a fit for your skill set or your personality or your values. That's kind of, I would consider the next step. You know, after solely relying on yourself, the next step is being able to afford to only work with the people you want to work with and take on the projects you want to take on. And so I think you will find true fulfillment if you can get to that point. And I know that that's not always easy to do.
Right. In some ways, it's a privilege to get to that place where you choose who you work with. And, you know, also out of survival.
And for a music industry, a creator, that's really where a good attorney can help is that you might only have a couple of options for a publishing company, and you really want to make the transition, and you don't want to wait and still have a side hustle, side job. An attorney can help you make sure that there are the adequate protections in your agreement so that you can continue toward your goal of, even if it's not the ideal fit, it's your only option, and you can work on the agreements and the relationships and have that kind of peer mentorship or team member that can help you navigate and use the opportunities that are in front of you as springboards to other opportunities that are closer aligned to your goals and vision.
Yeah. I appreciate that kind of vision casting and perspective. I think that's a gift.
Sure.
Not everyone takes that mindset. And it's like, if I say no, then what happens, or if I say yes,
Right.
Weighing the pros and cons. So definitely can appreciate that. But one thing that we like to do as we wrap every episode, Christian, is we have this sort of signature question for each of our guests, because we spend a lot of time talking about your general philosophy, sprinkled in with some personal anecdotes. But for you, I would love to hear, what does wellness look like for you in your life today?
Sure. I think for me, there are different seasons, of course, of wellness, and I think that even though I have a lot of conversation about thinking about when you felt your best and be disciplined and things like that, the reality is that the ebbs and flows of life aren't conducive for you to maintain 100% discipline 100% of the time. And for me, the wellness component comes back to just making sure that I'm being intentional about the choices that I make, and how I spend my time, how I interact with others, how I care for my family, the time and attention. And I think that when you start to be intentional about how you spend your time, then you have a greater understanding of self, and are then able to project and help others in the best way that you can.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive, the industry is very competitive and can take a lot out of you if you internalize and personalize all of your interactions and responses and things like that.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to self-regulate, but also realize that it's not going to look perfect, is something that I think for me is really important. Yeah. The nuts and bolts are going to be different from every person. For me, I ebb and flow in and out of different diets or exercise things or spending time with family and things like that. And I don't think that at the end of the day, there's any one right solution. But the solution is just to be intentional about continuing to explore. And you can still, at 41 years old, I can still explore different creativity outlets, different, whether it's exercise or wellness or meditation or things like that. It's fun to explore. And for me, just to keep changing it up. And I think that, that plus just relationships with others, with family and friends, are two key components to making sure that you are able to put your best foot forward professionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a go-to kind of like wellness self-care tactic right now that's your fave? Or I hear the ebb and flow, but kind of what's your go-to right now?
Yeah. I try to make sure that I'm moving every day. Right now it's football season, and my football fandom is my me time, and so I combine some movement. Usually, my guilty pleasure is listening to a talk radio show that is a Tennessee football talk radio show. So my guilty pleasure and my wellness this is my time, is taking my 30 minutes to an hour walk or jog around our neighborhood and listening to my talk radio show that I've saved for the day to listen to.
I love it. Prepping yourself for the next trade or the draft.
That's right. No, it's just I'm a hardcore Tennessee Vols fan, so we're
heck yeah. I'd be disappointed if you weren't from East Tennessee.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that's awesome. Christian, we are just so appreciative, sincerely, of your time today. And I think there's so much.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Anytime. And we look forward to this episode and its content, hopefully meeting people exactly where they're at, hopefully speaking some truth or kind of just resonating with what they might be navigating during this season, some of those deeper questions. And if there's, if you're open to it, no pressure. But if people have questions, is there a way that they could reach out and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. My email is cb@christianbarker.com. Okay. Also, if you just go to christianbarker.com, there is an inquiry email on there that comes to me as well.
Awesome.
So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to include that information in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
But thank you again.
That's great.
And with that, thanks for joining
You're welcome.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.